All right, and back for yet another video. This time something a little bit more interesting than just plain old spare ribs or brisket or whatever else, doing some pork belly. And in this case, planning on doing something maybe a little bit better than normal. So this is, of course, some natural pork belly from HEB. It's good stuff. And I've used this before, everything from making bacon to doing what I'm about to do right now, which is make kind of a, not really an appetizer, but trying to shoot for more of a pork belly slider. These will be pork belly burn ends, and straightforward process. The goal is to smoke these over a 2-to-1 ratio of lumberjack cherry, with the final part being some char hickory, just for a little bit of color and bite. Gonna treat these pretty simply with a rub I'm working on right now. It's got a lot of paprika in it, some good chili powder. I went with fancy light chili powder as opposed to my normal ancho. Want to give it some red color, put a little bit of tomato powder in there. Of course, kosher salt. Didn't kick in quite as much cayenne as I probably wish I had, but this is also meant to be for some people who maybe their palates aren't quite as sensed or used to cayenne and a few other things. Planning on trying to do these with flavors I think will be very compatible with pork. Skipping a little bit and going with a head country sauce. It's good stuff. This is my preferred. If I'm going to use a bottled sauce, this is the stuff I prefer. Going to make a peach glaze for it with some Southern Comfort. So it'll have a little bit of there, just again for flavor. It'll cook out using some peach nectar and using some peach preserves. It should be a very straightforward process tomorrow. Going to let these sit overnight. The rub itself should penetrate. Again, what I'm going to go for is a pretty consistent cut across the board. Gonna have a total of 9 pounds of this stuff, so it's gonna feed more than just me, obviously. Gonna share this with some friends and give them some King's Hawaiian rolls to go with it. I wanted to start the process of making some bread and butter pickles to go with this, or maybe even a light vinegary slaw. Simply put, the pandemic is making apparently supply chains a little bit wonky right now, and could not for the life of me find any Kirby cucumbers. I have never made homemade pickles, or I should say homemade bread and butter pickles before, so that will definitely be an experiment, one that I'll probably put into a shorter video form, because you go to some of these the top tier barbecue joints, the new school barbecue joints, places like Franklin's, Killen's, Tejas up in Tombaugh, Texas. They do make their own house-made pickles, and I think the difference is pretty amazing, actually. The process for cutting these up, it's nothing special. I'm not going to do the entire thing for you guys, but I will show you the types of cubes that we're working with. Most of this fat will render out, and I kind of wish I'd made bacon with this. It's gorgeous. I do like a fatty bacon, and the natural pork belly from HEB, it's about as good as you're going to get in any supermarket. I actually do like it better than Costco and that kind of thing. So the cubes themselves will get as close to a square as I can. It's not about being perfect, of course, in terms of size. Some people I've seen these things, they actually score them with rulers and make sure they're exact. For me, I just want them in the ballpark, really. All right, picking back up in terms of the seasoning process. I decided after cutting up 6 pounds of pork belly that probably was going to be enough. Part of it is because I had that beautiful, the other one was actually even better in terms of the striations and the lean to fat ratio. I'm actually going to try to make some bacon out of that, and I may do it. I've got some new things, including some molasses, granular molasses, some honey powder I want to experiment with, and see what I can bring to the table with different types of brines and so on, and I probably will make that into a video as well. Since these are just going to be sliders, it's kind of a one-bite slider on a King's Hawaiian roll. Again, I want these things well-coated with rub. The glaze is going to do a lot for it. This is really just get some salt content in there and make sure that there's some flavor beyond for those who don't want it just glopping with sauce, because I probably will convert, almost like a jus, I will convert some of the unused glaze into a light sauce, maybe thicken it up just a wee bit by reducing it. That can be served with those King's Hawaiian rolls. The real key tomorrow will be the glaze process, managing the cook, making sure that the temps are where I need them to be. I'll probably pull them off the smoker around 190, in between 195 and 200 degrees. And then let them, of course, just kind of sit in the sauce, and the carryover temp will take them 201 is my best guess if I pull them a little bit earlier, around 195. that's it for now. Got a little bit of a little cayenne in my nose. I'm sniffling a wee bit. We'll check back in tomorrow and get the cook started. And hopefully you will see something that you want to try for maybe a Super Bowl party coming up, such that it is with the NFL season, or just to get together with something a little bit different than moink bowls or whatever else. Okay, we're picking back up. It is a nice and chilly Texas winter day, or at least what's winter for Texas. Going to go ahead and set the Blaz'n for 225. Auger's making a bit of a squeak that worries me. I think it's actually probably the shear pin, but we'll see how she does. I don't expect any issues. I've used it in plenty of cold weather before. It's a fatigue factor at best and may actually solve itself like it appears to be. Gonna put a little bit of water in here simply to keep anything from scorching. And as you can see, got the pork belly arrayed on 2 separate wire racks, 2 little baking or cooling racks rather. Come in super handy for removing them. Also keeps them up off the grate in case there's any creosote. I need to actually degrease this one pretty bad, or at least for me pretty bad. Pretty straightforward process. You can see smoke's already starting to crank. No extra seasoning needed really. This is just a straight ride through for about 2 hours, and I'm going to probe them for tenderness. Once they are where I think they need to be, they'll go into a similar roasting pan, cover it in the peach and Southern Comfort glaze that I'm creating, and then cover it, go back for a bit longer, pull it out towards the end to set the glaze, and Bob's your uncle. So it's turned out to be a gorgeous day down in Crosby, Texas. Got everything where I want it to be in terms of the pork belly bites. It's been just about 2 hours at this point. I'm liking the color. I think that in terms of the rendering, it's going well. You can see that there's been quite a bit of fat that's been collected down underneath that little impromptu drip pan I put. It is definitely time to go ahead and put everything in a pan. So pull these out real quick. So again, in terms of feel, they're definitely where I want them to be. Color on these things is really nice. I'm gonna let them run for probably about an hour in the foil pan. I'm gonna be adding some butter, some brown sugar, a little bit of natural local honey, I believe it's local, a couple of grinds of pepper, and cover it. Help break down everything just a wee bit more, and then once that's done, it will be time to put the glaze on, which that honestly will be the proverbial icing on the cake. Distribute the butter around the pan. This is a full stick of butter. And as far as the brown sugar goes, I'll use my kind of a wet hand, dry hand method here. This is just over a half a cup packed of dark brown sugar. It's gonna melt down, of course, and make a syrupy glaze that's gonna work well with everything else. That's one of the reasons why I try to avoid too terribly much sugar in the glaze itself. And also another reason why we use Head Country, because again, it's not an in-your-face like Sweet Baby Ray's in terms of overall sweetness. The honey itself is it gives it a sheen, kind of like adding butter to a sauce or a gravy. It helps provide nice mouthfeel, but it also provides a nice shininess. It works well in most recipes. Black pepper is just because I want just a wee bit more heat. So, nothing too fancy, not measuring the honey at all. Some people do. For me, it's just, again, you know when you know, and that is more than enough in my opinion because of all that brown sugar. I will say that these Magnum pepper mills are amazing. The quality of them in terms of the grinding mechanism, the ease of use, can't be beat for the price point. I think that it's definitely worth what's probably $50 for the investment. And there's something, again, the taste of fresh pepper. It makes a dish. That's the only way to put it. So, again, this is going to go back in the smoker. Okay, so these have been in here for just about an hour at this point, and The good news is, my gut feeling based on how they felt last time, they will be good to go for the glazing process. I typically leave mine in just a little bit longer than the average person to, to set the glaze. I like mine to cook down just a bit. I did thin down the peach Southern Comfort glaze a bit. Let's see how these look. Oh yeah, that looks pretty phenomenal. You can see that it did form a bit of, kind of a just its own little basting liquid. As far as the feel, oh yeah, these are good to go. These are gorgeous. This I'm happy with. So what I want to do now is just kind of drain a bit of the sauce out, or really I guess the drippings and everything else, and that way it allows the glaze to do its work. So I've got most of the braising liquid out, and then we'll hit it with some glaze and see how things go. So, again, with this glaze, you can see, of course, that there are some peach chunks in there from the preserves. It is got a nice bite to it. I did put some hot sauce in, which, of course, if you're not a fan of hot sauce and everything else, you certainly don't have to do that. But it's a flavor that I personally enjoy. And just toss these a little bit. And I'm assuming that everybody in here has seen Malcolm Reed or most other barbecuers. I will tell you, the guys, latex gloves over the top of a cloth glove give you chef hands. You've got the ability to obviously go in and toss things around in a glaze or whatever else. You've got the ability to handle things. Is it still going to be hot to the touch? Oh, absolutely. But it's not going to burn you. And you still have the dexterity you'd want without having to use, let's say, a silicone mitt or whatever else. One thing that I do want to do with these in terms of placement, because I do want to let this go for about 30 minutes or so, is make sure that every single one of these is nestled down in that glaze. They've all now been tossed. Again, the feel of these things is they're not falling apart, but they are definitely pliable. The fat has a nice give to it. A lot of it's rendered out, which would save this from just being a giant mouthful of fat. Let's move this one over here, and I think we're good to go. So I'm going to let this sit for a bit, pick up a little bit of smoke, let that glaze set. Overall, it is going to be, hopefully, a real nice set of sliders once all these are done. So we'll check back once we're ready to go. And back for the final taste test. Pulled them out of the smoker after 30 minutes. The glaze set nicely. You can see that thickened up, tacked up, just like it should. The way I typically prefer to do these, don't get me wrong, they're delicious on their own, but throwing them on some King's Hawaiian with a few dill pickles makes for an amazing slider. And so that's what I'm going to do. I will try one on its own. These are still quite hot, but hey, you sacrifice for your art. So let's see where these are. Pick a small one here. Now, the peach glaze, of course, as I mentioned before, you can really pick whatever flavor profile you wish. Oh my God. You know, everyone who's got a YouTube channel makes these orgasmic noises during their tasting and so on. Hopefully, I'll have the moral fortitude to say if it sucks, it sucks. That's outstanding. The rub itself is still a work in progress. I still want to add, I think, a little bit more heat to it. And then again, of course, depending on the protein, I can always add it after the fact in addition to a base rub, which is probably the smarter play in the long run. The fat on this has rendered perfectly. The meat is chewy without being tough. The peach, it's subtle, but it's there. If you're a fan of peach, you'll appreciate it. This would easily work with apple. I could even see maybe orange marmalade or orange preserves being used, and there's some orange juice in there. Satsumas in Texas would work as real well. It's a blank canvas. Pork picks up flavors so well. If I were to do it with apple, I probably would use a mixture of apple butter as well as apple jelly, maybe even a little bit of apple jack if you wanted to make it a bit more adult. But as far as how I would typically serve these, again, that's very much a grown-up slider. So let's see how this tastes. The pickle provides a textural element. Yeah, I like pickles. A little bit of sourness as well. These are dill pickles. They're not bread and butter, whatever else. I do prefer dill with a sweeter recipe. The neat thing is I cut back. I used a very steady hand on the sugar content for all of this. The brown sugar was really the only truly sweet element. Well, the honey, of course. But it's not in-your-face sweet like I've had with some others. Overall, I rate this as a success, and of course, that's one of the reasons I'm taping this. This is one of those things that you could actually serve as a main, obviously, as sliders. You could serve it as an appetizer. It's great just as a snack. Now, is pork belly better when it's used for bacon? Bacon is pretty much the perfect food. I do think that if you've ever had crispy pork belly, or if you've been to some top-tier barbecue places around the country that do everything from bone-in pork belly to a more traditional pork belly slice, it's a nice change of pace. The sauce with this, especially with the amount of the little bit of heat in the background, the vinegar tones and so on, the fatty isn't quite as rich as it would be if it were just plain by itself, or even with a little bit of sauce after the fact. If you haven't tried pork belly bites, pork belly burn-ins, I recommend you do so. It's an easy prep. Sourcing the meat is the toughest part. Once you've got that, it's all downhill from there. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. Again, I'll make sure that obviously the recipes are there for you to use in terms of the glaze and the process. But other than that, that alarm means time to eat. You guys have fun. Take care.